Hey guys, guess what? It's Angel and you're watching my latest video. This is the third video in a series of videos that I'm doing dealing with mental illness, in particular dealing with bipolar disorder. And I wanted to do a video talking about the different medications that I have been prescribed and the different benefits or side effects that I felt from the different medications. So, over the last 20 years, I've been prescribed tons of different medications because originally I was diagnosed with just depression. Then the second doctor I saw diagnosed me with, on top of depression, I was diagnosed with PTSD. I was diagnosed with panic disorder and social anxiety disorder. And so I have been given over the years medications dealing with those things. Specifically, I was given Celexa and Paxil initially to treat those things. I will say that Celexa I did not really get a huge benefit from. Mainly I got headaches from Celexa. Paxil was like a miracle drug as far as panic disorder and anxiety. It completely took away my panic attacks, and I'm always super anxious anyway, so I still had anxiety, but it relieved the panic attacks, which was huge for me because panic attacks can be super debilitating. If you've never experienced a panic attack, just really quickly, I will tell you that it is like, the best way for me to describe a panic attack is if you've ever had a dream that you were falling and you get that adrenaline rush and your heart starts racing and you just, that is what a panic attack feels like to me. It's like it comes on out of the blue, immediately your heart starts racing, you have this imminent feeling that you're going to die. And it lasts my panic attacks last anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes, and they are completely debilitating, and they are not fun. But the Paxil took care of that completely. The Paxil did not, however, treat my depression, which is where we start getting into the bipolar diagnosis, because I was taken off of the Paxil, put onto Cymbalta, to hopefully treat my depression. At this point, I was only diagnosed with depression and the other things that I talked about. Over the course of the next year, my doctor continued to increase my dose of Cymbalta because I was still not having really any relief from my depression episodes. And eventually the dosage I was basically prescribed the maximum dose that you can prescribe, I was on. And at that point I started having the hypomanic symptoms, which I went in and talked to my doctor about, and that led to the bipolar diagnosis. So at this point, she lowered my dose of Cymbalta because I was told by her at that time that, generally speaking, antidepressants, if given to people with bipolar disorder, can actually bring on or increase manic or hypomanic symptoms. And so she did not completely take me off of the Cymbalta, but she drastically decreased the dose. And she put me onto a medication called Safras, which is an antipsychotic. Initially, I did well on the Safras. She also put me on, I requested a medication called Topamax. The reason I requested it is because a lot of the medications that you're given for bipolar or depression or really any kind of mental illness, a lot of the medications you're given, one of the side effects is weight gain and increased appetite, which I was experiencing. And this was a concern for me, and I had read that Topamax could be used as an appetite suppressant and could be prescribed to offset the increased appetite that you would get by taking antidepressants and other medications like that. So, I was put on the Safras. My Cymbalta dose was lowered. I began taking Topamax. as an or as an appetite suppressant. I was given lorazepam to deal with anxiety, which it deals wonderfully with anxiety. And I was also given Ambien. No, sorry, not Ambien. I was not given Ambien at this point. I was given a medication called trazodone for sleep. Trazodone worked really great for sleep. I was able to go to sleep with it and sleep through the night without waking up. Before then, before I was given the bipolar medications, sleep was very, very difficult for me. I either would not go to sleep, or it would take me forever to go to sleep, and then once I did go to sleep, I would wake up like 3 or 4 times a night, and so it was really, really difficult for me to sleep. Once I was given the Saffris and the trazodone, I began sleeping. Number one, I began being able to lay down, put my head on the pillow, and go to sleep, and then stay asleep all night until my alarm went off the next morning. That's something that I had never been able to do in my life, not since I was a little girl. And so that was a huge thing for me because I had not gotten good night's sleep for years and years and years. So I was put on this combination of medications, which initially worked really well. As we increased the dose of Saffris, I began to have some side effects. I began to have increased depression. I began to have what is called suicidal ideations. Really quickly, if you don't know what suicidal ideations are not necessarily you planning to kill yourself, but they are you having thoughts of how you could kill yourself. Really, weird things like I would be driving down the road and I would all of a sudden have a thought of, what if I just veered off the road and just, flipped the car? Or I would drive over a bridge and I would think, what if I just pulled over and I just jumped off this bridge right now? Things like that. And the ideations they got a lot more violent for me on this medication combination. I had just a kitchen knife that was that sounds really scary, I know, but I had a kitchen knife that was in my nightstand that I was using to divide my Saffris pills at night, because these are sublingual tablets that initially I had to cut in half because that was my initial dose. And when you cut it in half, I was instructed to not touch the pills with my fingers because the oils from your fingers would start to dissolve the medication. And since I was only taking half, I didn't want to start dissolving the other half of the medication. So I would cut the pill and then I would use the knife to kind of scoop the pill up and then put it on my hand so that I could then put it on my tongue so it could dissolve. So this knife was in my nightstand, and I woke up one morning and I started having these thoughts of, basically I was visualizing myself taking the knife and stabbing myself. Incredibly, incredibly frightening. And then the thoughts went on. I mean, we had a gun in the house. It included that. Eventually I had to, have my husband put a lock on the gun because of these thoughts. And I started to go into a really, really dark place. Really, really dark place. In fact, this is where I began to make my plan. And decided on a night where I would carry out that plan. But I had been given by my counselor, we had been talking, we'd been meeting, I'd been telling him that I was having these thoughts, we had been discussing it, and we had gone over what's called the safety plan. And I'm not going to go into specifics in this video about everything that transpired that night, because that's going to be another video, but suffice it to say that I ended up going to the hospital that night and ended up in the hospital for a little over a week. And while I was in the hospital, it was determined that I was having an adverse reaction to the medication combination I was on, and at that point I was taken off of the Saffris, I was taken off of the Cymbalta, and I was put onto a medication called Seroquel. And so at that point I was given Seroquel. I was still on the lorazepam for my anxiety. I was given Ambien to sleep, and the trazodone was taken out because the trazodone was actually part of my plan, and we'll talk about that in another video. But so the trazodone was no longer available to me, so I was given Ambien to sleep, and I was still on the Topamax, and so that was the combination that I was on, or that I started in the hospital. And I got out of the hospital, I came home. I was still not I was no longer having thoughts of hurting myself, but I was still in a deep depression. And so it took, time to work with my doctor. Over a period of time, we continued increasing the dosage of Seroquel. We just began kind of tweaking that medication combination that I was on. And it honestly felt like an eternity. It felt like I was never going to get to the right combination. It felt like sometimes I would feel like I'm just going to stop taking all of my meds and just, I just felt like I had had so many medications put into my body, and I didn't know what was working. I didn't know what wasn't working. And I just felt like a guinea pig. And a lot of people can feel that way with this illness. You can get really, really frustrated. You can decide, I'm just going to go off all my meds, because you get frustrated with the side effects. You get frustrated with the meds not working. And then oftentimes a lot of people with this illness, the meds do work. And when the meds work, they think, I'm good. I'm not ill. I am perfectly fine. I don't need this medication. And they'll go off, and then they'll have a relapse. So it's a difficult thing to deal with. But it's been my experience that you have to stay on the meds. You have to communicate with your doctor. You have to tell them if you're having an adverse reaction and you're having suicidal ideations, you need to talk to your doctor and tell them, I am having these thoughts. This is not okay. Those thoughts are not okay, and they're not normal. When you are having those thoughts, your mind is not functioning properly, and that is when you need to be talking to your doctor and coming up with new ways to treat and tweak your medications, and alert your doctor and let them know that you're in a dangerous spot. That is a dangerous spot to be in. When you're having thoughts of veering off the road or jumping off a bridge or taking a knife and stabbing yourself, you're not okay. You are not okay. And that's when you need to talk to your doctor. And I didn't know where to go, honestly, to get help. So what I did is I packed a bag, and I was going to drive myself to the hospital, but it turned out that I called my neighbor because I needed somebody to let my dogs out, because I was going to be gone and my husband was out of town and my son was going to be at work. And my neighbor knew that I had been struggling, and I called them the night that I decided to go to the hospital and said, can you come and let the dogs out, because I'm going to be gone. And she said, well, are you okay? And I said, no. I said, I'm going to the hospital tonight. And she said, is your husband home? And I said, no, he's not home, and I'm just going to drive myself. And she said, no, you're not. And so she drove me there, and I just went to the ER because I didn't know what else to do. But that's what you do. You go to the ER because you are in an emergency. It is an emergency situation when you are having those thoughts and you are to the point where you're afraid you're going to do something to hurt yourself. So please have a safety plan, and please talk to your doctor, and please know that if you're having those thoughts, you're not okay and you need help. Okay, that is a red flag. You need help. So coming out of the hospital, I was on that combination, and I started to do better. I started to, over time, do well. I was still struggling with anxiety. I was still struggling with being in a dark place, but I was slowly felt like I was clawing myself out of that deep, dark pit. And over time, I started to feel better. The Seroquel works really, really well for me. And eventually I was put on Seroquel XR, which worked really, really well for me. Then we moved to Utah from Washington State, and I had to establish a new doctor and a new counselor, which is a whole new, that was just not fun. And I was doing really well, but I had come in and mentioned to my new doctor that I was having a difficult time with my sleep patterns. He at that time decided that he would try a different medication on me, and so he put me on lithium. Took me off the Seroquel and put me on lithium. Took me off the lorazepam, put me on gabapentin for my anxiety. It took quite a while to get the gabapentin at the right dose and at the right intervals of the day to take care of my anxiety. I started again having panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and in between changing from lorazepam to gabapentin and from going off of the Seroquel, because the Seroquel does help with panic and anxiety. Those are mood disorders in themselves. And so going off of the Seroquel and going off of the lorazepam all at once was like a shock to my system. And so the gabapentin didn't initially help with the anxiety and the panic, and I started to panic about that. Eventually the gabapentin started to work with the anxiety and the panic, and I started getting relief from that as we increased the dose. The lithium initially, I didn't notice that I felt any better or worse, but over time I started to feel worse, and I started to have really bad side effects. Well, the side effects actually started initially when I first started taking the lithium. And the side effects I was having initially were headache, nausea, upset stomach, my skin changed, my face got really, really oily, my scalp got really, really oily, and I started gaining weight again. And the gabapentin and the lithium can both cause fluid retention or swelling, and so I was experiencing that with both of the medications. And over time, I think after about a month of being on the lithium, I started having suicidal ideations again, and they just came out of the blue. It's not like I sat down and I was like, I'm sad, I want to end my life, what are ways I can do that? It's not like that at all. It's just like I was walking, literally, it was December, we were in Salt Lake, we were there looking at Christmas lights, and we were walking back to the train, and I was fine, we were having a great time, we were with family, other than it was really, really cold, and we were waiting to cross the street, and off to my left was this high-rise apartment building, and somebody said, oh, it would be really cool to live there, and my husband was like, oh, we could, we should check that out, we should look into that. And I looked at that building and I thought, I couldn't live there, I would jump off of the balcony. And immediately I visualized myself jumping off the balcony, and then I was like, oh, who would take care of my dog, because my husband would be out of town. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, where in the world did that thought come from? What is going on? And I passed it off. And then we got home, and like 2 days later I woke up in the morning, and I woke up and I sat up in bed and I looked in my closet and I thought, where could I hang myself in there? Just out of the blue, these thoughts, so they are not natural thoughts, they are not okay thoughts, and I started to kind of feel like my brain was not really working very well, but I started telling my husband, I was like, I'm having bad thoughts, I'm starting to have bad thoughts again. And he was like, well, maybe it's your medication. And I said, well, maybe, but I've only been on it for a month, maybe it is, maybe it's not, I don't know, maybe I'm just depressed, I don't really know what's going on. And as time went on, I continued to have bad thoughts, and I saw myself going back to this dark place. And so I immediately called my doctor. It was a weekend. He wasn't in the office, but I left a message and I said, I am having suicidal ideations, and I think it's the lithium, and I'm not doing well, and can you please call me? And immediately Monday morning, as soon as he got in the office, he called me and he said, stop taking the lithium right now. And he said, I am going to put you back on your Seroquel, and I want you to come in and see me. And we set up an appointment, but it was like immediately he was like, stop the lithium. And so I did, and it took a good almost week and a half for all of the side effects of the lithium to work their way out of my system. Once I got back on the Seroquel, I started feeling better. So we see that in my case, the lithium and the Saffris were not good medications for me. The Seroquel happens to be a good medication for me. It is just a good medication. It keeps me stable. It keeps me stable. I mean, I'm still going to have ups and downs, but for the most part, it keeps me stable. So right now, my current medication combination that works for me is Seroquel for my bipolar, gabapentin for my anxiety. Excuse me, I still take Topamax as an appetite suppressant. I do have Ambien to take when needed, when I cannot sleep. And so that is kind of my road over the last 3 years of medications, and what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and what side effects came from different medications, and warning signs that you need to look for when you're on different medications. If you're feeling in a dark place, if you're having suicidal ideations, chances are you're not on a good medication or you're not on a good combination. And number one, you need to talk to your doctor and your counselor and tell them you are having bad thoughts. You're having thoughts of hurting yourself, because that is a warning sign that your brain is not functioning normally. And I'll make another video kind of dealing with suicide, which is such a dark subject. Oof. But it's one we have to talk about. And I've made a video in the past dealing with suicide, actually when Robin Williams took his life, because that really had an effect on me. And I felt like I just felt really compelled to address it at the time. So I'll either make a video on that, or I will put a link below eventually to my previous video that I have made in the past dealing with that. But yeah, that's a dark subject that I don't really like to talk a lot about, but it is an important topic, and one that certainly is something that goes along with, I mean, it is mental illness in its worst form. So, but for the most part, that is kind of my experience, and so again, you know, this is just me talking about my experience, trying to get an open dialogue, trying to let people know that there should not be a stigma with mental illness. It is simply a disease of the brain. And just like you would treat heart disease, or you would treat diabetes or cancer, mental illness is a disease that has to be treated. And we are just normal people that are struggling through it. And hopefully these videos will reach out and touch someone who is also in the struggle, or knows someone in the struggle, and will let you know that you are not alone, that there are other people out there that are dealing with this, and we are normal people who just simply have a horrible disease that we have to deal with. So anyway, I will be making more videos to come dealing with this. I'm not sure what the next video will be about. I probably will talk about my experience in the hospital and what that was like. And I will make as many videos as I feel are necessary to deal with just the different subjects that I feel like need to be addressed. And I would really, again, encourage people that if you're watching this and you have an experience, or you know someone who has experienced this, and you have a comment that you would like to share, please do that. Comment below. Please ask questions if you have questions. I would be happy to answer them if I have an answer to them. And other than that, I hope that you guys are having a great day. I hope you are having a great week. And until next time, I will talk to you later. Bye.